In this video, I'm going to be going over the general sort of format of LinuxGym and some of the expectations and the general process for completing work in LinuxGym. So I'm also going to show you a few commands, but I'm not going to explain them just yet. So don't worry too much about that, because I will explain that in future videos. But here I really just want to go over the general sort of process for completing work in LinuxGym, because it's something that is really important that you get early on. Okay, so if you don't know, if you're looking at this screen and thinking, oh my god, what's going on, how is this set up, then you have missed the video on how to connect to LinuxGym from home. So please go back and watch that video. Okay, once you're connected, you will see the LinuxGym chapters over here in your browser window. And the general idea is that you want to complete one chapter each week. So you'll notice that the semester goes for, I think, 12 weeks, but there's only 7 chapters. That is so you have extra time. So if you need some extra time towards the end, there's like catch-up time and you can, so it doesn't all crumble. But I highly recommend that you really try to keep up to date, because in each tutorial your tutor will teach you things from whichever chapter you should be up to at that point. So if you're stuck on chapter 2 while your tutor is talking about chapter 4, then you're going to be pretty confused. So yeah, really try to keep up to date. And you can do LinuxGym at home, so you should be able to do that. Okay. So let's go into the first chapter. Imagine you're in your first class. You may even be in your first class. And we're going to do this first exercise here, create a file. Okay. At the bottom here, we can go to the next question, or we can go to the previous question. It's pretty self-explanatory. We've got this mark question button. So this is what's going to tell you, if you get marks for whatever you're doing. But I highly recommend that you don't rely on this mark question button, because the feedback that it gives you is very, this is a very simple question, so the feedback it gives you is actually pretty good. But when you get to more complex questions, this feedback is going to be very, very unhelpful to you, and it's much better for you to actually try to debug what you're doing, because we're going to be doing scripting later on. So when you're doing scripting especially, you'll want to debug your answers in the terminal rather than just hitting the mark question button and seeing if you get a mark or not. So keep that in mind. You should ideally know if you're going to get the mark based on what happens in the terminal, and this should really just be a formality, hopefully. Alright, so the question says create a file called hello world without the quotes. We need to be very careful that we're reading all this correctly. So this file needs to be called hello.world, because the system will completely reject it. You'll get 0 marks if you get anything slightly wrong. So I'm gonna, actually for starters, let me show you. So when I've logged into LinuxGym, I'll explain these commands a bit more later, but you'll see that right here, these are actually the directories that exist in the student account on the LinuxGym server. So ch1, ch2, ch3, and these folders correspond to the chapters that you're going to be completing. So when you're working on chapter 1, all of your work needs to happen in the chapter 1 folder, and the same for each of them as you go along. And it actually says that here in the notes section. Yeah, in the notes section of LinuxGym. Okay. So definitely don't forget that, because otherwise you're going to be doing work and it's not going to be working and you're going to be like, oh my god, why aren't I getting marks? Alright, so I'm now in the chapter 1 folder, and so this is where I have to do the work. So create a file called hello world without quotes. I will do that right now. Cool. I have done that. My file has been created, and now I hit the mark question button. And woohoo, I got my 1 out of 1 mark. Yay. Okay. Now that I've gotten my mark, it is very, very important that I hit this backup now button. LinuxGym is a very temperamental program and will crash a lot. And if it crashes and you have not hit the backup button, then you will lose your marks, and that will be very bad. So make sure that you're hitting the backup now button every time you finish a question. Okay, so that's how we answer questions. In LinuxGym, that's a bit of the general structure of it, and hopefully this means that you will have no issues with dealing with LinuxGym.